are these people?
of, I wanted to showcase some tenant unions and what they are capable of doing, especially when I don't know if anyone remembers, but someone specifically below me was asking about the 3% at one point. Um, to someone on the Capitol steps. Do you remember what that what people were doing on those Capitol steps when you were there, Colin?
Oh, you said 3%.
Yeah, sorry,
Like,
wrong
I said,
percentage.
yeah, 10.
Yes, 10%.
10%. Housing
But
eviction.
right, people, and particularly the eviction moratorium, right?
Right.
So that is now doesn't exist.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. So this is by Joe Piety from Workers World, and this is Pop Resistance, giving him a little love. But he wants to talk specifically about Philadelphia unions and who claim housing is a human right, which I personally agree. But so this is a march from demonstrators supporting the UC townhome residents. This was July 9th, right? So for months, 70 black and brown families have organized resistance to the threatened eviction by the Altman Company in Philadelphia. When supporters and residents set up a protest tent city on July 9th, Altman got a judge to order what he called trespassers off his private property. The area labor movement galvanized with a strong response, pointing out that workers have little interest in cooperating with Altman to carry out the eviction. So, the Philadelphia Workers Solidarity Network and the Save the UC Townhomes Coalition first put out a petition with a plea to workers and union members: don't cross our picket line. If the city attempts to tear down the encampment, over 400 workers, labor activists, union locals, and housing activists have signed on. Right? So, further strengthening worker voices, the Labor for Black Lives Coalition sent a strong statement of solidarity with the UC townhomes to Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney and other city officials, signed by 16 unions and labor orgs representing tens of thousands of black and brown workers, some of the largest unions in Philly. The statement calls on the city to immediately block the sale of UC townhomes. The complete statement is as follows. So, thoughts so far before we get to the statement, Colin?
I do, but I want to wait.
Okay. So, the Labor for Black Lives Coalition calls on Mayor Kinney and city leaders to save the University City townhomes. The Philadelphia Labor for Black Lives Coalition stands in solidarity with the courageous residents and housing activists fighting to save the UC townhomes. As a coalition representing our city's black union leadership and members, we believe unequivocally that housing is a human right. The University City townhomes, owned by Brett Altman, has provided low-income housing to more than 70 families for almost 40 years. Altman has announced a pending sale, mass displacement, and demolition of the property in September. The location is one of the final affordable housing communities left in what was historically known as the Black Bottom neighborhood. This community has its roots as one of the earliest black neighborhoods in Philly, but over the last 50 years has been systematically dismantled as the result of urban renewal and the expansion of the University of Drexel and the University of Pennsylvania. We are calling on Mayor Kinney and city leaders to provide a solution to keep UC townhomes in their homes and commit to preserving deeply affordable housing for very low-income seniors and families. We call on the city to immediately block the sale of UC townhomes, require investment in these units to make them safe and livable homes, and halt developer plans to develop the land upon which they are built. So, have any thoughts yet, Colin?
Gentrification at its finest.
Yep. Yep. And very similar to, shout out to Afeni who covered this, where school housing over in, what's that school in DC? Howard, right, and how it was atrocious.
Well, it's funny because I live right by Howard. I live 2 blocks from Howard. Like, and I'm not racking on Howard because especially like students are coming back this week.
Yeah.
for classes, so I don't want to rack on Howard, but some of that infrastructure is garbage.
Yeah.
Like the buildings are old, they're not very well maintained, but just around it, like within a block or so from the campus, you're seeing like brand new like condominiums being built up, so it's like, so instead, like, and I believe some of them are owned by Howard,
Yeah.
so instead of like giving those quality, housing to their students, they're providing, like housing, luxury housing to like people who are living in the city. And it just does, it's just such, going down that street, it's such a, like a difference in like seeing Howard and how it is. And then right across the street and a little further down, it's like you see these high rise, well, not high rise, but like these luxury condominiums that are being spread and more being built up, uh like all the now. But yeah, it's just it's just the differences. It's just really striking, like for
Yeah.
those who know DC.
So, they continue as a coalition of labor unions representing black and brown workers. We know that securing safe and affordable rental housing is a constant struggle for working class people of color in the city. A large number of the workers we represent are required to reside in the city as a condition of their employment, but rising rent costs, a shortage of affordable housing, and structural barriers embedded in the rental application and affordable housing voucher process make securing housing increasingly difficult. We need our city's leaders to stand with our black communities so that our workers are able to continue living and working in Philadelphia for years to come. So, I wanted to bring attention to this story and specifically another story, just to kind of show that like this is a international thing, in my opinion, as well, right? So the tenants of North York building demand landlord rescind eviction notices. So this is in Toronto, as the locals would call it. This is from CBC News, right? So they talk about tenants of a North York apartment building are calling on their landlord to rescind all temporary eviction notices issued to people who live on the first floor. The notice, known as N13 forms, have been issued to about a dozen tenants of 1570 Lawrence Avenue West, a six-story building with 87 units. The evictions will allow workers to complete major renovations while the tenants are out of their units. On Sunday, about 20 people protested the notices by putting up flyers on poles near the Greater Toronto Area home of the landlord, Kyle Poulos, president of Poulos Investments. The tenants also handed out flyers to his neighbors. So, we are aware that extreme works needs to be done on that floor, but until you can make a proper plan that has the livelihoods of the tenants as the priority, withdrawal is necessary, the tenant said in posting on Instagram. According to Ontario's Landlord and Tenant Board, an N13 form is a type of eviction notice issued to end a tenancy when a landlord would like to demolish, repair, or convert a rental unit for another use. The Poulos Investment Team, a real estate investment company, said in an email on Sunday, it has been in constant communication with the tenants at the building in the last few months. It said it has communicated with tenants who received the N13 forms by letter, phone, email, and in person to discuss the situation. I'm going to press X for doubt on that one myself, but the company said tenants on the first floor have to leave their units for the renovations to be completed. There is no possible way for the required work to be completed safely while tenants occupy the units, the company said. This has been communicated to the tenants numerous times. No one is being asked to permanently leave. The N13 allows for all residents to return the units at their original rents once the repairs have been completed. Right, except they would have already had to find another home that might put them in a contract with another building, Right. So right. It's kind of like, the company asking you to leave. Like you're not being fired. But technically, like,
right. It's just the idea, like immediate thought is, you're going to displace tenants from your property. Like, have you made any plans of where they're going to go? Have you given them financial compensation to find a home?
right.
How long how long are these
renovations going to take, right?
And
Yeah.
what's the guarantee that they're able to get them back? Because generally, like, if you're making renovations in a place, especially given I feel this is kind of a large scale renovation,
Yeah.
they're not trying to have those tenants back.
No.
Generally, they're making those renovations to increase the rent,
Yes.
to attract a certain tenant,
right.
you know? So, so again, it's just all bullshit here.
Yep. So the company said it believes that the protest outside of the homes of its president on Sunday was an inappropriate way to convey concerns. There's no justification for the sort of intimidation and bullying displayed by the tenants and Renoviction's TO today. There are appropriate channels of communication, and this was certainly not one of them, the company said. So in a letter to tenants, the company said, contrary to the practice of reno evictions, we follow the guidelines set forth in the N13 and have no history of abusing its process. So the tenants want to have their voice heard a little bit too. So I don't think it's fair, tenant says. Sandeep Saran, a tenant who is expected to leave by the end of the month because he received an N13 form, said he is worried about the future. He has lived in the building for the past 14 years. He said the first floor tenants could be moved to upper floors while the renovations are being done. Saran said the landlord, as soon as it acquired ownership recently, sent a letter telling all tenants they can leave with 30 days notice instead of 60 days because it is planning major renovations. I have no plan.
Wait.
Yeah.
They just had 30 days?
Yes.
Oh, God, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yes. So I have no plan, he said. I don't think it's fair. I don't think the renovations are necessary. The landlord has assured him that he will be able to return to his unit at the current rent after the work, but the N13 notice still has him distressed. Well, yeah. And this is also not saying that they couldn't evict you right after, right. Or figure out another way to hike it right after that.
Right. But not only that, this tenant has been living at this building for
14 years.
So obviously, if he's living there for that long, he must be a decent tenant. So
you would think,
you think that he'll be ideal to keep.
Yeah.
Given that he's basically proven his worth, essentially.
Right. So, Celeste Brown here, another tenant, said the company is only interested in making money. Her family has lived in the building for more than 10 years. Nobody has a plan, she said. I just see no morals. The main priority is profit. Meanwhile, in a document given to shareholders, Poulos Investments said it would like to rent to a new demographic of tenants. It has since apologized to existing tenants for using this language. They said sorry. Appreciate it. So some lawyers weigh in. Karmaya Saad, a lawyer, said it's very common for landlords in Toronto to try to increase the value of their properties through renovations. She noticed that under existing law, when tenants leave their accommodations, the landlord has the right to increase the rent. This is known as vacancy decontrol. So, wait, what? So, to try and increase the value of the properties through renovations. Under existing law, when tenants leave their accommodations, the landlord has the right to increase the rent. Right, so once they leave, so they're saying that, yeah, you'd be at the same rent price. So anyway, fundamentally, the issue is that housing is treated as a form of investment, separate from its utility as a necessary commodity for life. She said, when you have a situation where people who have capital are able to buy up housing and then rent it out and make a profit on that, it's unsustainable in the long run. Certainly, that's reflected in the current rental market, where people are paying far beyond what is reasonable proportion of their monthly income just to survive, just to have somewhere to live, and those numbers aren't going down. So yeah, couldn't agree more on that. So I just wanted to feel like, these two organizations that came together, that Renovation TO or whatever, came together to try to fight this, and what was it? The Black Coalition of other unions got involved with the first story in Philly.
Right.
But like I finding out that like renters have their own power as, you know, proletariat themselves, you know. So but I don't know. What do you think?
It's interesting that, well, a couple of things. Um, what I noticed is that I think from both articles, I think a common link is that these are renters,
Yeah.
you know, so they had no rights at all. Um, when I was visiting my dad in Barbados a few weeks ago, like, and I've heard this quote from him, but my dad's a Pan-Africanist, so he's very much, you know, I'm kind of more traditional in a lot of ways, but he quoted, you know, Malcolm X, you know, basically saying revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. So basically, you know, Malcolm X promoted the idea of owning something,
Yeah.
you know, land, you know, owning a home or whatever else. And
Right.
so, you know, which I definitely agree with, you know, I think especially if you own a home, that's a legacy for your family. It gives you some standing within the community, you know, but I think what we're seeing now is a lot of, you know, larger corporations are buying up these homes for profit, you know, and pushing out, you know, people of color, especially, or poor white people out of these communities who can't afford it, you know, who may rent, or, you know, people who do own, you know, try to price them out of their homes,
Yeah.
you know, um, to expand, you know, their property portfolio, essentially.
Yep.
And so I think, you know, it does bring into the idea of like, what we should be doing as far as owning property, you know, if you wanted to own a home or something like that, it definitely brought those thoughts up for me.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, you know, immediately my other thought, which I said I wanted to wait for, like, you know, I know we talk about Smalls a bit, but like Chris Smalls is basically going on a hot labor summer tour right now.
Yeah.
You know, like, where was he for this? Now, granted, this is not connected to what is happening at Amazon,
Right.
you know, like in Philly, but these are people who are organizing, you know, around the idea of like corporations coming in, you know, and taking their homes. And like, I feel like someone like Chris, with the stature that he has right now, could at least speak to that, or at least maybe make an attempt to make an appearance. I don't know what it is, but I think
Yeah.
it's
I
just
mean,
like, I think it's just for me the disconnect of people who say that they support these causes and are for these causes are not necessarily there, or are not necessarily promoting what is happening on the ground versus
right.
what we kind of see in the media, which is kind of more glam,
And even
you
then,
know, or
like I didn't hear anyone talk about this mainstream, like in any way. Like, you know, like you have to find it out through back channels and you know, like you know, like Pop Resistance has to put it out. You know,
right. But I think for a
like
lot of us, I mean, at least tonight, you know, like I got the Tita Shorter story was from the Washington Post, which, you know, I think that's a big enough story that a lot of, you
yeah,
know, mainstream media is definitely covering that, you know, so I think that at least that's something good, at least in mainstream media. But, you know, but a lot of these stories, and I think, you know, I'm very happy that we do this, is kind of taking the more obscure stories
yeah,
that no one is necessarily talking about, and kind of highlighting that to highlight, you know, the work that is happening, or at least what people are trying to do,
yeah,
um, to kind of see the idea like there is organization happening. It's just that, and again, I feel like for a lot of politicians, you know, this is like, if they were involved in their districts, this is stuff that they should be aware of somewhat, where they're able to kind of, you know, kind of bring those issues to Congress.
mm,
So I think especially in like Philly, you know, like, and I don't know who is a congressperson in Philly right now, but like off the top of my head, but like that congressperson should have been aware of what's happening, you know? Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, yeah, it's the people that we should be doing the work, but ideally we talk about the inside outside game a lot. Like these issues should be elevated to our politicians in power to kind of elevate and make that push for change, for systematic change, you know, especially for housing rights. But we're not seeing that. So, you know, like, so it can so a lot of these stories kind of, you know, are not talked, like they're invisible.
Yeah.
So, you
Well,
know, but I'm glad that
speaking of
we try
stuff,
and
yeah.
bring some visibility to